Welcome to the Pump Fake, everybody. That's our Week 2 Sunday around the NFL. Thanks for hopping in. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you're as a podcast, leave a review, all that good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Jarrett Bailey with you as always. Joined by my friend from Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio, Jason Fitz. How you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm doing come on, the Raiders won yesterday, so I'm on a high that may not like. It's so funny how Mondays feel different depending on how your favorite team did, right? Like if your favorite team got squashed, like if you're a Cowboys fan today, you're scared. You can't even turn on any of the networks because you're worried about watching the reaction. When your team gets a massive upset nobody expects, man, I'm feasting on all of the content this morning that is rarely positive about my beloved Raiders. So it's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great week. It's a good month. Like football's back. Like, come on, brother. Like this just feels good right now.
As a Steelers fan, I can resonate with you. It's been like the past few years of my fandom have sucked just because the quarterback has not been good and the offensive coordinator was a mess. Things seem to be looking up. I do want to start with your Raiders, though, because as a Steelers fan, obviously I was quite happy to see Baltimore start 0-2. And yeah, the Raiders, very much an upset, probably the upset of the weekend. They were the largest underdog of the week. I think a 9.5-point dog on the road in Baltimore. Held the Ravens to only 9 points in the first half, outscored them 20-14 in the second half. Maxx Crosby, it felt like he was living in the backfield for 3 hours. And now the Las Vegas Raiders 1-1, Baltimore 0-2. Was this more about the Ravens losing, or was it about the Raiders kind of taking advantage of Baltimore and winning?
I think there's a little bit of both. I don't want to cheat the question here, but I will say this. Sure. The Raiders defense over the course of the first 2 weeks, like a lot of it was made of J.K. Dobbins putting up big numbers. If you watched week 1 for the Chargers, the Raiders defense was spectacular until the dam broke and they were just out of energy. They were gassed. The same thing was happening in this Baltimore game. I mean, Baltimore's offense could get nothing going. The Ravens had, I think, 5 yards rushing in the first half. Like it was an incredible defensive effort that was keeping them in the game, the Raiders, even if they didn't belong there. In the second half, you started to see guys get gassed because you're asking so much of this defense. The remarkable part to me is that Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator of the Ravens, didn't continue to utilize that. Like I would have just pounded the ball down the throats of a tired Raiders defense and made them make a stop. And instead, they kept trying to get cute with it. And that only let Max be Max. So I think there's a little bit of blame here on the Ravens and their play calling. I don't think it was good enough, but also a lot of credit has to go to this Raiders defense that frankly is going to every week keep this team in games. Like it's going to be sexy to make the Raiders a big underdog because their offense stinks. I wouldn't do it because this defense is too good.
Yeah, and by the way, how about Devontae Adams? 9 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. They really leaned on him in the second half to make a few spectacular catches. Defensively, too, yeah, I mean, they forced a interception on Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry only had 5 rushing yards in the first half, like you said. But overall, the Raiders' defense, it was good last year, and it kind of got overshadowed by the fact that Josh McDaniels, everything that happened there, going from him to Antonio Pierce, moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo to Aiden O'Connell. But defensively, this is a very fun team to watch. And Maxx Crosby each week seems to be making his case to be Defensive Player of the Year. Maxx Crosby, by the way, will be on this channel next week. So everybody tune in for that. That'd be a good time.
Say hi to Max, buddy.
All right. I'll make sure to do that. I'll make sure to tell him that you say hello. Moving on, though, from your Raiders, I think the other big game, or at least the closest one, the most fun one of the 1 o'clock window, the Buccaneers defeating Detroit on the road. How can you not love Baker Mayfield and this Buccaneers team? Like this is, and there was plenty of like pregame stories that he did for various networks and whatnot, detailing his journey from Cleveland to Carolina, Los Angeles, now to Tampa. And it really does feel like he found a perfect spot for him. I think that Liam Cohen coming in as the offensive coordinator to replace Dave Canales is a perfect mesh. They have some history from when he was in Los Angeles. And the offense hasn't missed a beat. The Buccaneers are 2-0. And somehow, some way, we'll touch on the Saints later, but like the NFC South, kind of fun early on. And the Buccaneers, with a nice win on the road to really cement themselves as a team that's to be reckoned with in the NFC.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people expected it to be the NFC suck coming in, and now it doesn't look like that at all, right? Like, if we're being honest, and look, I was wrong about the Bucs. I thought Canales was sort of the quarterback whisperer here, and that there would be a step back. There hasn't been. I distinctly remember talking to Baker at the Super Bowl, and it was so interesting because I was trying to dig into what's different now. And the thing he kept stressing in our conversation was that this is the first time he's ever just been able to play quarterback and not have to worry about anything else. Doesn't have to worry about being Baker. He doesn't have to worry about pressure. He doesn't have to worry about expectation. He really felt like when he came into Tampa Bay that the expectations were so low that he could just walk in and just be a guy in that locker room and not have to be the face of the franchise. I think you see what happens when you have a comfortable quarterback. And we've seen this. I mean, look at the other side. Like, look at the way, although Goff had a terrible game, a forgettable game, could have had 4 picks in this game, walks with 2 picks on this that were just stupid throws. They were Will Levis type stupid on some of those throws. Like, it made no sense. I think Jared Goff had a forgettable game, but we've seen the resurrection of Jared Goff for the Lions in large part because he's just at a place that he's more comfortable and it feels like a good fit. We've seen that with Baker. And I think we really got to hone in on this at some point. Like, we get so obsessed with quarterbacks and coaches. It's not either or, it's both. I think right now to have a great team, you've got to have like an 80s wrestling tag team. Like, they both have to work together in a way that makes sense. And I don't care if we're talking about Patrick Mahomes, obviously, and Andy Reid is a good example. But you have to have a quarterback and a coach that speak to each other's identity, that seem to be on the same page, that sort of complement each other. That's what the great franchises do. That's what we're hopeful that we'll see with Herbert and Harbaugh at some point. That's what we definitely see with the Bills, right? You can just go up and down the list. In fact, even though the Bengals may have their up and down moments, like, we feel like there's this connection between Taylor and Burrow, right? Like, that's what you have when you have the right ones. It's interesting to me because I think that's part of what Tampa Bay has found. And there's a magic to that, man. Like, you get that magic sauce right there. You bottle it up and you keep using it. I think Tampa Bay is going to be much better this year than I and many people expected.
All right. So if, let's say, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, who are Brian Callahan?
And by the way, I just real quick, like, I grew up in Vegas as a little kid. A lot of people know this. And if you watch the old AWA Classic matches that used to be on ESPN Classic, I was at those at the Showboat Casino. My dad and I used to go all the time. So, like, the Midnight Rockers that became the Rockers were my obsession. I love them. I have like all the toys that have ever been made of them. And then, Shawn Michaels went in and he stabbed Marty Jannetty in the back. Never got over that. I was angry at Shawn Michaels for like a solid 30 years of my life. And then I finally went back and started watching those old AWA matches. And I was like, man, I see why Shawn was angry, because Marty wasn't near as good as Shawn was. Like, Shawn was good the whole time. So anyway, now that I've given everybody their 80s wrestling deep dive, I don't know, Will Levis and Brian Callahan, I can't even think of it. Like, maybe, I don't know, man, because they're not a tag team. They're not working.
Yeah, they're like a Franken team thrown together, and it's just not working.
And they're watching this and seeing a head coach openly throw his quarterback under the bus at the second press conference after the game. Like, I can't say this enough. The Will Levis chapter for the Tennessee Titans is over. And I don't think there's any way it comes back. And I'll go back to when he was drafted. I talked to a lot of people covering the draft at the time for ESPN. Talked to a lot of people about Will. And something I heard from people that knew him well is that mistakes stuck in his head. And he had a really hard time sort of moving past some things. And one of the knocks on Will was that he's sort of sensitive in that way. He's sensitive about his own performance. And he was the type of guy that you really need to build up and support. That's something that Vrabel and the Titans seem to be willing to do. That's something Callahan and the Titans do not seem willing to do. Yeah. And, I get tough love, but the fact is, you could make the argument the Titans would be 2-0 if it wasn't for Will Levis right now. That's not tough love. That's a coach that's looking around and saying, we got to find a different option. Like, Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans, I think, are headed for a brutal, ugly divorce. And this season is going to be all about figuring out who their quarterback is next year.
Yeah, I mean, they showed Callahan on screen after the toss backwards that was recovered by the Jets. He's just throwing his head. So, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, that's not exactly.
By the way, and he's right. Callahan was right about that. Like,
right. Yeah,
you can't be that. You can't fix that level of stupid in 2 straight games.
Yeah, it's not good. The Jets, though, they get their first win. Aaron Rodgers was pretty giddy afterwards, as he usually is after a win. What does this mean for the Jets going forward? How did you feel about the Jets coming into the season? I feel like that's probably a preemptive question that I should ask.
I think the Jets were overrated coming into the season, and look, they have all the tools. I get that, but you'd be hard pressed. This is what I keep asking football historians, and I'll be the first to admit, like, people invite me on their trivia teams all the time because they think, given my music background and sports background, I'm going to be the historian that's like, the 1972. Like, I'm not that guy. So, but I've been asking everybody, when's the last time you saw a team that had absolutely no playoff experience whatsoever suddenly catapult themselves into the Super Bowl? The answer I get a lot is the 99 Rams, the greatest show on turf. Like that might be but like when you think about what we've been saying about the Jets, oh man, they're headed to the Super Bowl. Really? Because nobody on that roster, not named Aaron Rodgers, do we have any proof of concept on how they handle the moment? So to me, the Jets are they're an okay football team that might be pretty good. I think the death of the Bills has been vastly overreported. I've said that for 2 straight off seasons. I think the birth of the Jets is being wildly overrated. And in general, whether we're talking about Kirk Cousins or whether we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, I don't trust 3,742-year-old quarterbacks coming off of Achilles injuries. Like I don't, right? So what do we see from the Jets? We saw a Jets offensive line that absolutely got abused by the Titans front. Maybe we'll find out the Titans defense is that good. But man, I don't know. Like I watched an okay football team beat a football team that made so many stupid mistakes. The Titans turnovers in the red zone, not just the Will Levis one, bad special teams. Like you go up and down the list. The Titans lost that game. The Jets didn't win it. So I don't walk away with some great confidence in the Jets moving forward. I think the Jets they're okay. They feel to me like an 8-win team that we're going to sit here every week and overanalyze every one of those wins or losses.
Yeah, I hesitantly picked them as a playoff team just because like everything that everybody else has been saying. Like, all right, they won whatever, how many games with horrible quarterback play, the defense is good, if Rodgers, yada, yada, the same old thing. I will say, like, when looking at their performance against the 49ers, when it just seemed like they weren't prepared for the one thing that Kyle Shanahan does, which is run the ball the outside. They just let Jordan Mason run all over him. I was like, all right, this could probably be a long year. And looking at it now, you beat a Tennessee team that's probably not going to be all that good. I wonder if we're going to see Mason Rudolph sooner than later. You talked about Will Levis, that whole thing already being done. I do wonder when's the cutoff when Mason Rudolph gets thrown in there and say, all right, let's see what we have here instead of the whole Will Levis thing.
I think, let me look. Oh, hold on. I'm going to pull up their schedule real quick here. And I've got it in front of me as I move quickly into this with the Titans. Because at 0-2 right now they take on the Packers, who Malik Willis revenge game. Can't believe I'm saying that.
That's great.
And then they go to Miami, take on the Colts, then the Bills, then the Lions. I mean, I think by the time they get to the Patriots, they got 1, 2, 3, 4 more losses on their schedule. Maybe one win.
Maybe 1-6.
1-6. Yeah, I turn the page at that point. I turn the page, or I embrace the fullest level of suck humanly possible, and I get myself into the conversation for Quinn Ewers, right? And I'll be I'll be the first to admit, like I've covered the draft now for 8 years. Covered it for Yahoo this year, and after the draft this year, I told everybody, look, there's no quarterback in this year's class coming up that looks like they're worth it today. Quinn Ewers and the ascension of Quinn Ewers has been one of the best stories in college football. Go back and watch. Before the injury, but watch the game 2 weeks ago. His ability to climb the pocket, get his hips centered, and still throw off platform accurately. There's been an ascension of Quinn Ewers that's been beautiful. If he continues that throughout the course of the season, people are going to start to suck specifically to try to get to Quinn Ewers. I think that Quinn Ewers becomes this year's Jaden Daniels, where everybody suddenly is infatuated with him, and rightfully so. So maybe you start to suck for Quinn. That'd be fun. Let me say one more thing on the Jets stuff. I'll just ask you this question.
Yeah.
When's the last time you saw the New York Jets as a franchise handle chaos incredibly well? Because I would make the argument the next time they handle chaos will be the first time they handle chaos. And if things don't go well for the Jets for a single week, there's going to be absolute chaos. Do you really trust Robert Saleh to be able to calm the seas and make everything beautiful for the Jets if things start to go wrong?
Yeah, I said it coming into the year, and I wrote it plenty of times where I was like, this is going to go one of two ways. I don't think there's going to be a medium. I think they'll win 10, 11 games and be a playoff team. Or by week 9, Aaron Rodgers is on Rogan talking about how the government puts listening devices inside of cashews or something. It's going to go. It's one of two extremes. So in terms of the last time they handled chaos, I don't know. Do we consider the Mark Sanchez draft pick chaos? Because they went to 2 straight AFC title games with him. I feel like that was kind of chaotic. It's probably the last time.
Yeah, I'll give you that. A much different chapter, a much different era. Mark, somebody I've worked with a bunch, a much different personality than Aaron Rodgers too. So I just, I realize that there's chaos around Mark Sanchez sometimes, but Mark's the type to be like, yeah, I took my private jet across country because I really wanted to surf last night before I came into work at ESPN. So I'm just saying, that's a different kind of chaos than Aaron Rodgers creates.
All right, moving on from the Jets, the Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville Jaguars. I felt like this is a golden opportunity for the Jaguars to get right. And I think now we have to start having the Doug Peterson conversation on, okay, maybe this thing is run its course. They're 1-7 in their last 8 games. That one win came over the Carolina Panthers when CJ Beathard was starting. Trevor Lawrence was injured last year. So, 1-7 in their last 8. They lost 5 of their last 6 last year, but they had the built-in excuse of, all right, Trevor's beat to hell. The defense is awful. They fixed the defense over the offseason. Like Ryan Nielsen came in. They haven't allowed more than 20 points in a game so far, but they haven't scored more than 20 points in a game so far. And I think that falls on the offensive-minded head coach not making in-game adjustments. I think that Trevor doesn't look as confident as he needs to be right now. I think that he's the guy. I just don't know if Doug Peterson is, and I think that those questions are really going to be start getting asked around Jacksonville. Oh, and by the way, they play the Bills next. It's not getting easier. So I think we got to start having that conversation.
The day Trevor Lawrence was drafted, I said on air that the Jags would fail Trevor Lawrence before Trevor Lawrence failed the Jags. My question is, has that already happened? Because here's the thing. I agree with you. We got to have a Doug Peterson conversation. But I also listened to every apologist tell me at the end of last year, the high ankle sprain, the high ankle sprain, the high ankle sprain. Like Trevor Lawrence wasn't himself because of injury. We heard it over and over and over again. Trevor Lawrence does not look good. And I don't care how much money he got. Like this is now, we've got a quarterback coach supposedly that's an offensive whisperer supposedly. And like, let's be real. I think a lot of us were a little stunned when that big money contract came through because it was like, well, for Trevor, like, are we 100% certain? Like, I'm watching this and I hear you. Doug Peterson is a real conversation. I would be stunned at this point if Doug Peterson can get the Jags turned around because they don't look good. But man, even Trevor Lawrence coming out afterwards and being so clear that they played terrible. Well, remember last year when he came out after the game said it looked like we didn't even practice this week. Oh, what are we doing? Like how much at some point do we not have to look at Trevor Lawrence and say, hey, I know how much we all thought of Trevor Lawrence coming out of college. And I know that the tools are there and I know the skill set is there. And I get all of the reasons that we're in love with Trevor Lawrence. But Trevor Lawrence yesterday was not good enough, not just Doug Peterson. So I think the surprising thing to me is now you got a division where the Titans look like they're just going to fall apart. Anthony Richardson looks exactly like I thought Anthony Richardson would look this year. Trevor Lawrence doesn't look good. The Texans look like, man, what are they going to have this division locked up by week 9? Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's wild to me how bad the rest of the AFC South looks, and that includes the Jags. I think you're right. The Jags are on the precipice of a complete annihilation of the entire way they do business.
Yeah, Travis Etienne said after the game, we don't need talented guys. We need, was it hardworking guys? I think that was the exact quote. Like, bro, that's brutal for week 2. Come on now. And I will say this, though, too. Like, I don't think we're freaking out this much if Etienne doesn't fumble against Miami, and they probably win that game if he doesn't. And we're saying, okay, they're 1-1, bad game, but they played well last week. But it's amazing what one little play can change. And all of a sudden, now they're 0-2, staring down the barrel of the Buffalo Bills gun, and it could get ugly quick.
I mean, that's the same thing, though. We'll go back to the last game we talked about. Remember, the Titans had the ball up 7-0. And they turned the ball over at about the 10-yard line. And what would have they were driving in to make it 14-0. Later in the game, they had the chance to go up by 2 scores again. They found a way to blow it. 2 or 3 plays are the reason that the Titans didn't beat the Jets. And now we're sitting here annihilating Will Levis and the Titans. 2 or 3 plays on most Sundays. 2 or 3 plays, like one play is the reason the Kansas City Chiefs were able to pull out an just absolute crazy win, right? Like 1 or 2 plays were the difference between the Ravens winning and everybody being calm that they survived the Raiders and losing. Like that's the modern NFL. So I hear you, but man, good teams find a way to win. Bad teams find a way to lose. It's cliche, but it's real.
That's a fair point. Well, we might as well stay on Cincinnati and Kansas City. Hey, was it pass interference?
Yes, it was pass interference.
Yes.
Look, but also like, and so they just posted this on Yahoo Sports. I said this last night on our reaction show. At some point, you're not lucky. It's your identity. And we just need to start acknowledging that if you give Patrick Mahomes the ball with more than 30 seconds on the clock, he will get 3 points, at least, maybe more, right? Like that's what happens. And we could sit here and say, well, I hate the people that are like, oh, the NFL's fixing it. Look, let's be clear. If the NFL was going to fix an outcome, they would fix it so the Cowboys win because they get much better ratings out of the Cowboys than they would anybody else. So they're not fixing these games. They don't need to. The NFL is enough of a reality show we're going to watch. So it's not the refs that are coming here and making Kansas City win. It's also not just, wow, this team's lucky. You can't do this 3, 4, 5 years in a row. The identity of the Chiefs is that they always win close games. The other identity of the Chiefs is that they're always in close games. I don't know how you beat the Kansas City Chiefs because it's always going to be a one-score game with 2 minutes left. And they've got a quarterback that will always beat you in a one-score game with 2 minutes left. Congratulations. The rest of us are screwed.
Yeah, and for all the people who immediately, flock to Twitter to be like, "That's rigged, happened again." Like TJ Hushmanzada was pretty vocal about it last night. A lot of other people were just very angry. But if you look at, if you go to the football database and look at the total penalty numbers since 2020, they're consistently top 10 in penalties, top 10 in holding, top 10 in pass interference. Like, it's not as if they are getting this favoritism shown to them by the. I just think that entire thing's stupid. But I think now we have to have a similar conversation about the Bengals because they are also 0-2 in the AFC North. And now they have a little bit easier of a stretch than their AFC North counterparts in Baltimore because they play Washington and Carolina over the next 2 weeks. So a good opportunity to bounce back and get back to 500. But this is like the third straight year we've seen Cincinnati start off slow. So I think that they kind of have that built in. We're like, all right, we've seen this before. Not too worried about them. They got to an AFC title game after they started 0-2. They'll be fine. But at some point, if you're a Bengals fan, you'd like to see them come out of the gates hot rather than tripping on their face and having to dig themselves out of a hole.
Maybe, or you're just like, yes, what we like. So just hear me out on this. The
Sure.
last 4 games, this is the month of December at this point on the schedule for the Bengals.
Yeah.
They have the Steelers, the Cowboys, then they have the Titans, Browns, Broncos, and Steelers again. Even if they split with the Steelers, they're going to be taking on the Titans, the Browns, and the Broncos. They will be heavy favorites for all 3 of those games as we sit right now. The Cowboys is the only questionable. So, like, you look at the way the schedule lines up, they're going to win 5 of their last 6 games. So, yeah, do you want to be in a hole? No. But you're also Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, is Jamar Chase losing his cool to the ref absolutely mind-blowing to me? 100%. But I think part of the reason that I am calm, cool, and collected on it is that this is still the Bengals. They still have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and that's always going to give you a chance. They have a head coach that I believe in. They've got some talent. They got to clean up some things defensively, sure. But if you look at the Bengals overall, they're going to be just fine because they're always just fine. I think that the more troubling part of this is that was the second least amount of yards thrown for in any game in Patrick Mahomes' career. The least was a game he didn't even finish due to injury. So you could make the argument that was the least productive Patrick Mahomes we have ever seen, including 2 picks. It was one of the worst games of his entire career. And they won. Like, it's just, what do you do? What? So if you're the Bengals, the sky's falling a little bit. But if you're the rest of the NFL, you're looking around, you might just be saying, hey, you know what? The Bengals now feel what every other franchise feels, which is, by the way, there's Optimus Prime is over here, and there's nothing you can do to take down Optimus. I can make the argument Optimus Prime is cooler. That's an 80s reference. Look it up, cooler, kids. But Optimus Prime is over here, and no matter how much you try and kill him, you can't kill Optimus Prime. That is the Kansas City Chiefs now.
And for the Chiefs, like, the 2 hardest games they have left will be against the 49ers and the Bills. Even if they split those, which I think that at worst they will, they could win 13, 14 games and just stroll into the number 1 seed in the AFC, and we might just be in for another one of this. As of right now, are you taking the Chiefs or the field to win the Super Bowl?
Chiefs.
Okay.
And look, I'm taking it. Look, it's always a smart bet. By the way, if I was betting my house, you take the field because that's always the right thing to do. But for the purpose of this question, last year's Chiefs team, I went back and rewatched the Super Bowl after my co-host at Yahoo told me he watched it. Went back and rewatched it, and we forget how painful that offense was. Like, it was painful. That offense now is not painful. They look explosive. They have a ton of speed. Xavier Worthy is going to be a big dynamic player for them. Rashee Rice is taking this massive step forward. They're hard to beat on a lot of different levels. So the worst version of the Chiefs still won the Super Bowl last year. It wasn't easy, but they did it. I think it's dumb at this point to bet against Kansas City. Like, sure, it's like the Patriots in their heyday. There are going to be some years that a freak play beats them, but barring injury, I just don't see how you can bet against that. Buffalo would be my 1A in the AFC, but I cannot justify, knowing that Buffalo always finds a creative way to lose to the Chiefs. I can't justify betting against them.
As the resident Josh Allen stan here and whatnot, I would love for this year to be the year similar to when Peyton finally beat Brady in the AFC title game. I would absolutely love for that to happen for Buffalo, and not just Josh Allen, but that city and just that entire franchise would be great to see. Moving on from the Chiefs, I guess actually, stay on the Chiefs real quick because you pointed out something. Patrick Mahomes' final stat line: 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But the defense, coming up, Shamari Connor with the fumble return for a touchdown. That's another element that you got to talk about. And I think it's starting to get talked about a little bit more, just how good the Chiefs defense is. It's probably a top 5 unit in football, even after trading L'Jarius Sneed. They've had these other corners step up, and Jalen Watson, Connor, Trent McDuffie's still there. Like, they are able to kill you from both sides of the ball. And I think that is the biggest thing. When Mahomes doesn't play well, they know that they can lean on Chris Jones and that entire unit and be like, all right, well, Mahomes isn't going to play great every week, so we'll just rely on them to kind of pick up the slack this week. It's a double-edged sword.
That's why when people say, why not replicate the Chiefs? Let's just lay this out. To replicate Kansas City, you need one of, if not the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You need one of, if not the best head coach in the NFL at that moment in Andy Reid. No worries about that. You also need one of, if not the best defensive coordinator in the entire NFL, Steve Spagnuolo, which would be very hard to get unless you have somebody like Spags that's done the head coach thing for a minute, had some offers, but is really happy where he is. And he's at a spot in his life where he's not trying to climb anymore. He just wants to be part of winning a bunch of rings and something special. Most of the time, a defensive coordinator that has had the success that Spags has had would be back on the sidelines no matter how it went before as a head coach, taking another chance. But he loves coaching with Andy Reid. He loves being in Kansas City. He loves having a quarterback like Mahomes. All of these things have to line up. Oh, and you also have to have one of the best drafting front offices in the NFL also. So if you really want to replicate Kansas City, the rest of the NFL, if you want to do that, great. You just need a Hall of Fame quarterback, a Hall of Fame coach, a Hall of Fame defensive coordinator, and one of, if not the best front office scouting departments and GMs all together working with no ego in a way that supports all of them. When I lay it out like that, I just want to remind everybody, this is why Kansas City is going to, for the next 10 years, win as many Super Bowls as they want to through this process. Because you're not going to beat Kansas City by getting better. You're going to beat Kansas City by being luckier there. That's not a great way to do business.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that gets overlooked here is, like, you look at this roster and it's very few outside additions. It's very much a homegrown organization where Mahomes was drafted by them. George Karlaftis, Nick Bolton, Trent McDuffie, like all of these guys that have been really good role players for them have been drafted by the organization. Even, Pacheco, Rice, and now Xavier Worthy. Like, this has been, I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again. I don't think that's too crazy to say.
I know Field Yates had the exact number on it, and it's a couple years ago. But a couple years ago, he tweeted out every single pick made in the first 3 rounds by the Kansas City Chiefs, when he tweeted that out, was still on the roster and still an active part of the roster going into a Super Bowl. Think about that. When you apply that to your own favorite team, no matter who you're listening to, ask yourself, has your team missed a single pick in the first 3 rounds of the last 5 years of the NFL draft? And if the answer is yes, then your team is not doing as well as Kansas City did. Live with that for a minute.
It's crazy.
That's why we drink.
We'll stay in the AFC West, though. We'll go to a much less exciting game. The Steelers beat the Broncos 13-6. As a Steelers fan, I was very frustrated watching this game because there were multiple big plays negated by penalties, including a 51-yard rope from Justin Fields to George Pickens downfield, a touchdown pass from Justin Fields to George Pickens that would have put them up by 14 at half. Instead, they settled for a field goal. So the box score isn't quite as indicative as how dominant the Steelers were. And for anybody who didn't watch the game, I think they'll just kind of look at the box score and say, oh, Justin Fields stinks. Well, no, he made a lot of really good plays that game. But the Steelers are 2-0 for the first time since 2020, only the second time since 2017, and now they'll face the Chargers next week in their home opener. How do you feel about Pittsburgh right now? I kind of biased, but I picked them to make the playoffs this year after they did it last year with a much lesser quarterback room, offensive coordinator. And now 2-0, I feel pretty good about that.
So I got to qualify this. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Okay. I say this loudly. I don't care if we never walked on the moon because it won't change my Monday, right? Like if we, like, that's the way I always look. Like, if the Loch Ness Monster really exists and the government's hiding it from us, cool. Like, that's not going to change what I do tonight. Like, it's just, right. I don't care about any of these. That being said, there's always a big but after that statement, right? I said a month ago that Justin Fields was going to be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Never believed Russ was going to get it. The calf injury, fine, whatever. The minute Justin Fields hit that field, I've said loudly on Yahoo, I don't think he's coming off the field. And by the way, I still think that Justin Fields can be an above average starter in the NFL. If you want to make money every single Sunday, all you got to do is watch the Vegas odds on the rushing yardage for Justin Fields. Because I made a lot of money last year hammering the over every week. Like Vegas is wrong about it every single week. Justin Fields gives Arthur Smith the dynamic he needs in that offense. He likes a mobile quarterback. He likes somebody he can roll around and roll out. I think Justin Fields is going to have a pretty good year this year for the Steelers. And once he got that job, I don't think there was any chance he was coming off the field. That being said, and you're right, the penalties were a huge part of it. Pittsburgh is always well coached, and they always make the most of the opportunities that they have. They find a way to win. We talked about that earlier. I think Pittsburgh's going to be a pretty good football team with a great defense this year. Pittsburgh and the Raiders aren't that dissimilar. They both have very good defenses. Pittsburgh's offense is a little bit better. Pittsburgh has a coach that's obviously far better, far more established. We know all of these things.
Yeah.
To me, I'm not going to bet against Mike Tomlin with enough efficiency in the offense. And I think as much as we trash Arthur Smith because of his head coaching job with the Falcons, you got to go back and look at what he was with the Titans. He got that job because he was really good with an offense that knew how to maximize mid-level wide receivers that could get open at the second level of defense sometimes, a good tight end game, and a rolling quarterback. Like that's what they did. That's what the Steelers are going to do. This is how Pittsburgh's going to win a bunch of games. I think the Broncos are trash, and they're going to have one of the worst teams in the league this year. There's no doubt about it. I don't believe in Bo Nix, and I think that, frankly, we're overhyping Sean Payton and everything about the Broncos. So I don't necessarily put a ton of weight in these wins. What I think is important for the Steelers is they get a second win. They get a little bit more rhythm. They get a little bit more continuity. They get a little bit more confidence they take while they're banking wins that are just going to help them in the standings. I think by the end of the year, Pittsburgh is a tough out that just makes football ugly every single week. And that's okay with Mike Tomlin. He'll take that all day as long as he can win games, as you know, as a fan.
Yeah. I can subscribe to that Russell Wilson theory, by the way. Like, let's say that had Justin Fields not played, well enough in week 1 and they lost, I wouldn't have been surprised to be like, okay, Russ is suddenly feeling better. We'll start him week 2 against his former foe in Denver. But I can get behind the theory of, okay, he's probably well enough to play, but we'll keep saying that he's not and keep throwing Justin out there until there's a reason not to. I can subscribe to that. I'm all for the conspiracies.
And they have two straight winnable football games. The Chargers are getting a lot of media credit right now because everybody loves Harbaugh. Again, I would say go back and watch that first game against the Raiders with 10 minutes to go in the game. That was a 1-score game. It looked like that was going to come down to the wire. Raiders had real chances to win that, couldn't get the plays. Credit to the Chargers for winning that game. But beating Carolina, you get no street credit for it. Like Carolina is just, they're objectively terrible, right? So this game against the Chargers becomes very interesting. And the Colts, who I know we'll get to, like I have a lot of concerns with Indianapolis too. Like I think Pittsburgh's looking at a real opportunity to start 4-0.
Would be great to see. Last time they did it was 2020. The last time they did it before that, I don't know. I would have to go to the football database and look. Let's talk about the Colts real quick. What the hell? The Packers start Malik Willis, who everybody was just trashing all week long. Oh, this is going to be good. They didn't go out and get an actual quarterback. They're going to start Malik Willis. I think Matt LaFleur should get coach of the year right now just because Malik Willis threw a touchdown and won a game. Like that's an achievement of its own. Packers won 16-10. Anthony Richardson, man, did not look great pulling up his box score right now. Only completed 50% of his passes, 204 yards, touchdown, 3 picks after probably getting a little bit too much hype after that incredible throw we saw last week. Granted, it was one of the best throws I've ever seen to Alec Pierce, but this is kind of the other side of the Anthony Richardson coin where, all right, he's going to make dumb decisions. He's not consistently accurate. I think he's got a lot of that Cam Newton in him where he's a massive physical freak athlete who can run all over defenses, but at the same time, you're going to get games like this that make you just bash your head into a wall. So I don't know. How do you feel about Richardson? How do you feel about the Colts?
But this was the exact argument when he was drafted out of Florida. And I remember Orlovsky and I had a ton of arguments about it at the time because Orlovsky kept saying, when you look at the good on the tape at Florida, you've never seen anything like it. It'll blow your mind. And I kept saying, well, you're ignoring the bad. You can get rid of the bad. You can't teach people to do the good things that he does. You can teach him to eliminate some of the mistakes. I agree with all of that. We forget that last year was supposed to be the learning year for Anthony Richardson. He got hurt. He only played 5 games. The thing that AR needed coming out of college more than anything else was reps. And he didn't get those last year. So this is exactly what I expected from Anthony Richardson. I think long-term, he's going to be fine. But you mentioned being a Josh Allen stan. I think the Colts need to have the same level of patience with Anthony Richardson that the Bills had with Josh Allen in the beginning, who was maddeningly inaccurate. It's like, shut off the noise and just slow develop him for the next 2-3 years, and he could turn into be absolutely one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But in order to do that, you're going to have to take your lumps, and it's going to be these, like where he makes a play that you sit there and say, there are only 2 or 3 players in the league that can make that throw. And then later he's going to make a play that makes you say there are only 2 or 3 players in the league that wouldn't get benched for making that throw. Like his floor is going to make Will Levis look like Patrick Mahomes, and his ceiling is Patrick Mahomes, right? So like, what do you do with that? You just gotta wait it out. I think Indy's going to be wildly inconsistent. I did not pick them to make the playoffs. I think that this is going to be a learning year for Anthony Richardson, and what we saw Sunday is what we're going to get every week. Like, one week he's going to show you how great he is. The next week it's going to be awful, and you're just going to have to shut it out and say, don't worry, long term, it's worth it.
Yeah, I think that Anthony Richardson and Will Levis are going to be somewhat similar roller coaster rides, except Anthony Richardson's going to give you much more upside. And I think that he's in a good spot with Shane Steichen. I think that that's a perfectly offensive-minded head coach who kind of honed in Jalen Hurts and helped them get to a Super Bowl. So if there's any place that I think will get him to his ceiling as quick as anyone can, it can be the Colts. I didn't pick them to make the playoffs either. I think they're going to be one of those very fun to watch, crazy, like 8-win teams that miss out and are in it to like week 16, but just don't quite make it. What to say about the Packers, though, because they're still waiting on Jordan Love. Let me get their schedule pulled up real quick, because we know that Love's going to be out for a little bit with the MCL sprain, although it could have been much worse. But the fact that they get a win, get back to 500 next week. You mentioned the Malik Willis revenge game in Tennessee. Then they'll host the Vikings and then travel to Los Angeles to play the Rams and then host the Cardinals. Those are the next 4 games. We'll find out when Love is back, but what's your thoughts?
I mean, it gets tough. It gets tough. Vikings, Rams, Cardinals, Texans in a row. That's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And Malik ran the ball really well, but this is the only thing I'd say about Malik Willis. The Titans had him in their locker room. They knew what they had in Will Levis, and they decided that they were so okay moving on from Malik Willis. Not only did they not keep him on the roster, they traded him for a conditional 7th-round pick. They basically gave him away for a package of full lime Skittles. Like, and if you did that and Will Levis is your court, like, tell me you did that and you had Mahomes and you're like, it doesn't really matter who our backup is. Your backup is Will Levis, who you knew could do exactly what Will Levis has done. And you were still like, nah, we're good. Just get Malik out of the building. Like, it was a big athletic effort for Malik Willis. They ran the football. Josh Jacobs was great in that game. It set everything up for him. I don't think Will Levis is going to be sustainably good for the Packers, so they need to get Jordan Love back, but kudos for them. And you're right, LaFleur right now deserves absolutely all the flowers for Coach of the Year, because it's only 2 games in, but you just won that game with Malik. Yeah, kudos to you.
They ran for like a bajillion yards by halftime. Like, it was very clear, like, even on like 3rd and longs, 3rd and 10, they're running the ball, which is just saying we are horrified of our quarterback without saying we're horrified of our quarterback. But that kind of sent the message. He only threw 14 passes, completed 12 of them. Good for him. But like, that is a team that is very much trying to hide their quarterback and not have him be the reason that they lose. So Green Bay will be an interesting watch. As long as I can stay afloat by the time Jordan Love gets back. They were my darling coming into the season. I had them as the number 1 seed in the NFC and winning the NFC. So kind of put that a little bit on hold, maybe, just because I don't know what they're going to look like and how long Jordan Love's going to be out for. But this is a team that I really like as a whole, and a large part of that is because Matt LaFleur is, as good a coach as he is. So we'll see. That's an interesting division, especially with the Vikings beating the 49ers and Sam Darnold throwing a 97-yard bomb to Justin Jefferson. How about it?
I mean, Sam Darnold, Nate Tice at Yahoo has been just screaming all year, Sam Darnold's about to have a re-emergence. Everybody's going to fall in love. And I've been rolling my eyes at it. And then you watch this and you're like, man, son of a biscuit. Tice might be right. Like, but this also speaks to Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell has proven now for a year and 2 games that it doesn't matter what you like. I want my best coaches to be like the TV show Chopped, where you open up a basket of ingredients. And you're like, all right, I've got to make you something delicious with Spam. I'm going to do that. That's exactly what Kevin O'Connell is able to do. Like, he opens up and he's like, wow, this is canned minced meat at the quarterback position. I'm still going to win a bunch of games. So kudos to him. And Brock Purdy, I don't know that I've seen a game where a quarterback was as unlucky as Brock Purdy. Like, look, we can have the debate of Brock all day long, but the number, like, it felt like there was hot potato or they greased up the football or something, rubbed butter on it. Like, the football kept popping in the air and leading to picks. Brock Purdy just had one of those days where you say, man, the football gods are laughing with you and they're playing with your life. And kudos to the Vikings. Now the Vikings are like, you have to look at Minnesota and say, hey, we thought they were going to be plucky. But I was watching that game thinking, is Sam Darnold going to be so good that we question why they drafted J.J. McCarthy? Like, that's where we are 2 games in. We're just looking at it and saying, my God, if you can get that out of Sam, if Sam Darnold turns out to be your Brock Purdy, you never needed J.J. McCarthy in the first place.
I hear you. And I've said this for the past few weeks, and I went on a little bit of a rant about it. I like Sam Darnold. When he went to Carolina, I was driving the Sam Darnold hype train. When they started 3-0, I was taking victory laps just with middle fingers in the air. It was great. And then Sam Darnold showed that he was Sam Darnold, and I'm waiting for that to happen. And I understand that there's been cases, like Geno Smith, who have career resurgences and show like, hey, I'm actually good. It just, kind of mattered where I was at. Maybe that's the case with Sam Darnold, and I think that being with Kevin O'Connell, that is going to be the absolute best case scenario for him, and I think we're going to see more games like this. But I'm also awaiting the game that we get 3 soul-crushing interceptions from Sam Darnold where they lose by 3 scores, and he looks really bad because, well, we've seen that enough from Sam Darnold to know that it's certainly a possibility. So I'm not rooting for it. I hope he has a great year, but I think we're still talking about Sam Darnold in year 7 as if he's a prospect, when he's just kind of a middling quarterback at best, which is why he's on his 4th team in 4 years. So that's just my thoughts. I hope he has a great year, but I'm not going to be surprised if the bottom falls out.
You're right. I'll say quickly too, as much as everybody uses Geno as the comp, do we really believe, because every time it could be the next Geno.
Right.
Do we really believe that Geno's going to win a Super Bowl? I don't.
No,
I don't think Geno's all right, your best case scenario is your comp is an okay quarterback that's going to lead you to too many wins to go out and get the generational quarterback you need.
Absolutely.
That speaks to why you go out and draft J.J. McCarthy, because having a quarterback that'll win you 8 games is sort of the closest thing to the death penalty in the NFL.
Absolutely. And look, I know that all the, the film buffs on Twitter and all the, at the Ringer, Stephen Ruiz is a big Geno Smith guy and everything like that. But realistically, he's fun to watch and throws a pretty deep ball, but there's a ceiling there. And I think that there's a similar ceiling if Sam Darnold reaches his ceiling, if that makes sense. There's a lot of things that you got to hurdle in order to make this team a Super Bowl team.
To every single person that including my buddy Nate, that loves to tell you the greatness of some of these quarterbacks, I would say this: if you had to bet your house on one game, Geno Smith versus Josh Allen, Geno Smith versus Joe Burrow, Geno Smith versus Patrick Mahomes, we know who the dynamic quarterbacks are in the NFL, and if you don't have one of those guys, I don't believe you can win a Super Bowl. You can win a lot of games. I don't know that you can win a Super Bowl. I think Brock Purdy, and the hate on Brock Purdy is absolutely stupid. I don't care if he's a system quarterback. He absolutely is great in the system that he works in. That's all that matters. But if I have to bet my house on Brock Purdy, who I am a fan of, versus Patrick Mahomes, we've seen how that plays out. I mean, there is some element here of oversimplification, but I don't believe that Geno or Sam Darnold all of them are better than Gardner Minshew. Yes. But are any of them good enough to go out and repeatedly beat the best quarterbacks in the league? No.
I'm glad that we feel the same way on that. I feel like that was a very refreshing conversation you and I just had. I feel better now, Jason Fitz. I feel good.
Look at
that. Seahawks Patriots. Speaking of Geno Smith, Seahawks start off 2-0. Overtime game against the Patriots. Patriots look better than I thought they would. I think that was kind of my takeaway from this, is that they were almost 2-0 with a team that got bashed in the preseason for how bad they were.
Yeah, Gerard Mayo's got the Patriots playing hard. You can't take anything away from them. And you could really see that no Kenneth Walker III made a big difference for Seattle. They couldn't get the run game going at all. That was pretty ugly to watch. But you see the identity of what Gerard Mayo's doing. They're going to run the ball down your throat over and over and over again, and they're going to throw to their tight end. That's it. That's what the Patriots do, but it works for them. So, yeah, I'm with you. I give New England a lot of credit.
The Saints beat the brakes off the Cowboys. I can't believe we haven't really talked about this yet. Hey, how about Clinton Kubiak turning that car from an 03 Cavalier to a brand new Mercedes? Derek Carr looks good, feels rejuvenated. He's doing touchdown dances. He's talking to people's face. I thought the Saints were going to be one of the worst teams in football this year, and obviously it's still early. But a lot of that was panned on Dennis Allen being their head coach and not having a lot of belief in him. You, as a Raiders fan, have a ton of experience with that whole thing. But their offense is very, very good, and they're explosive, and they're 2-0 now, and they've scored 40 points in both those games. Very fun team, the New Orleans Saints. I did not expect to be saying that through 2 weeks.
No, and Alvin Kamara has a resurgence too in this, and just running all over the Cowboys. Cowboys got to figure this out. To me, the most disturbing thing, and I heard him talking this morning on ESPN saying, "Well, the Cowboys got to figure out how to stop the run." Yes, I agree with that. Also, the Cowboys got to figure out how not to come out flat. It disturbed me to watch a Cowboys team that felt like they were sort of sleepwalking through a game because that was their identity in the playoffs, and that we're still so early in the season. Like, we're not week 8 at this point, or week 9. Like, this is week 2, and we all know the narrative around this team, and that's when your entire team just comes out and looks disinterested in the game and looks like they're just not into it. That's a coaching issue. So, I think the hate on McCarthy's been overblown, but also I'm disturbed by the fact that the Cowboys came out and just felt nonchalant. They got the snot kicked out of them. We need to see a big response. And next week, I mean, Ravens, Cowboys, there's so much on the line in that game for both of those teams. Like, that becomes a early game of the year.
Absolutely. Here, I'll give you my big, way too early prediction. I think that we can probably both agree that this is the swan song from Mike McCarthy. Are we kind of in agreement on that? Is he going to be gone after this year? You don't agree? Okay, here, hit me with why.
12 wins 3 years in a row. You just paid Dak and you paid CD because that's what you always need on offense. Still think the Cowboys are going to win 12 games. That's what they do. So I think the Cowboys have a real shot at being the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. And yeah, they never win a playoff game, but if they win one, all they have to do is come out and play inspired football for one playoff game. And all of a sudden, Jerry's going to be like, you know what? We're still right there on the precipice. Like, we need a running back, but I just feel like, just like the death of the Bills was all about the fact that they can't beat the Chiefs. So that means that Buffalo suddenly sucks, which is a false narrative.
Right.
The death of the Cowboys is all about the fact that they suck in January. Well, let's have that conversation in January. But for the duration of this season, I still think this is a 12-win football team. I can't explain what happened yesterday, but I still think they're a 12-win football team. And that means they just got to win one playoff game. Hard for me to bet against that, even though they've never made that happen.
I won't be surprised if they make the playoffs, but if they're an early exit again, let's say they lose in the wild card round, I think that Jerry moves on. And if they do, there's going to be a certain offensive coordinator who's talked about not just taking any job unless the situation is right, unless the quarterback is right. Maybe Jerry Jones gives Ben Johnson a call, and all of a sudden we're talking about Ben Johnson in Dallas with Dak. I would enjoy watching that a lot. I think that would be very fun, and I think that Jerry Jones would be.
I'd love that hire.
Yeah.
That'd be a great hire. Only thing I'd say is that Jerry held on to Jason Garrett way longer than anyone thought. Jerry held on to Mike McCarthy way longer than anyone thought. Like, we have a false conversation about the Cowboys a lot. Like, we sat there and presumed that Dak wasn't going to get paid because there's no way. We sat there and presumed CD wasn't going to get paid. We sat there the first time and presumed that Dak wasn't going to get paid. And then before that, it was Zeke's not going to get paid. Like, Jerry Jones waits till the 11th hour, pays whatever he feels like paying. I think he likes the conversation. He likes the chaos. He keeps the coaches around way longer than we think. Like, Jerry's actually kind of a stable guy now. It's as weird as that feels. Like, Jerry in the 90s, not stable. Jerry now, stable. Me in the 90s, not stable. Me in the 90s, now stable. Like, I think, I think maybe we talk about the Cowboys differently than the actions actually show.
I think that Jerry is like if Tommy from Goodfellas grew old and just wanted to settle down. He's like, all right, I've done this enough for too long. I've just get out of here.
I love that. I love that analogy. That is spectacular.
Thank you. Final game, I believe so. No, we got 2 more. Chargers, Panthers. Not much to talk about there. If the Panthers played the 08 Lions, who would win? I think the Panthers are worse.
The Panthers are the worst team by far. And I would say this: when in any sport have you ever seen a team so bad that they got the first overall pick in their draft 3 consecutive years? They had it last year. Right. It's never happened. From my reason, I can never find a major sport where the same team has had the first overall pick 3 consecutive years. Now, they traded, obviously, last year. Caleb Williams was the first overall pick to Chicago. But that was by way of Carolina. Yeah. Like, the Panthers are in a very real situation where they could have the biggest, longest chapter of ineptitude that we've ever seen by any professional sports team in any of the major sports. That's how bad it is in Carolina. And I don't know how you fix that. I genuinely, you can't be so bad that you pick first overall 3 years in a row and tell me that doesn't seep into the culture. Like that seeps into the paint in the walls. Like you are absolutely screwed if you get to that point. And I think Carolina is facing that. Also, Bryce Young does not look good at all.
Oh,
Like Bryce Young is
absolutely
bad.
not. Yeah, in his post-game presser, he was asked about his confidence, and he said, "My confidence is in the Lord." If that's the case, buddy, you're going to become an atheist by October, as I don't know how this is going to be. This whole thing's a mess.
And by the way, real quick, just to be honest, I would say this. I've said this to athletes in their face. I truly hope God has more important things to do this week than worry about the confidence of a quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. That's all I'm saying. No, it's a controversial take. But in my mind, like God's got a lot of marker boards everywhere with a to-do list, and fixing the Carolina Panthers is not on the high list of the priority. Like might be way down. I don't think it's something God's like, wait. Cancel my phone calls, cancel my meetings. Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers need some help this week.
Judging by the
same thing to Joe Gibbs in the 80s with the Washington team, where he was always like, God's will for us to win today. Means it was God's will for somebody to lose today? That just feels like that's just so weird way to take it.
I absolutely agree. I had a point to make, but that made me laugh. And now, oh, damn it, I forget it. What was I
Now I've
say?
Offended half your audience for
That's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Yeah, the Panthers. Oh, I was going to say, did the 76ers have 3 straight picks when they were, hashtag trusting the process? I feel like that they were close.
Let me look 76ers and first overall picks in history. We'll see if Google gives me their history here. Pick Ben Simmons in 2016 was the first overall pick. Markelle Fultz in 2017. They had the third overall pick in 2015, the third overall pick in 2014. So yeah, no, they did not get number 1 overall. The NBA though, the lottery system does kind of make that.
Yeah, that does make. Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point. Good point all around. Okay. Giants Commanders, not much to say there. The Commanders kicked 7 field goals to win. They saw Chris Boswell do it a week ago and said, hold our beer. We can do that too. God almighty, these teams stink. Overall, like Daniel Jones, not good. Jane Daniels, I mean, obviously he's a rookie. We'll see how far he goes. Yeah, these are 2 bad football teams.
One thing here though, Joe Shane. I mean, what's a more fireable offense than having your kicker end up on the injury list on Saturday? And there are so many kickers that openly try out every single week. Yeah. The Giants elected not to have any safety on the roster for that, any additional kicker, knowing that their kicker was battling an injury. And then all of a sudden they played the whole game without a kicker, which made a huge difference throughout the game. They had to go for 2. They weren't able to try and kick a field goal late in the game. Yeah, Malik Neighbors should have caught that 4th and 4 ball, but they shouldn't have been going for it on 4th and 4. They should have been able just to kick the football. So like fireable offense to me if you're walking in without a kicker because your GM did not address the position. Joe Shane continues to just be baffling to me.
Yeah, what a few months he's had, whether it's, showing all everything that happened in the offseason on Hard Knocks, and now just the Giants got a clean house. I think that's a team that's going to be in the top 5 in terms of draft position in the offseason. They're an entire mess. I believe that we have touched on, let's talk about the Rams Cardinals real quick. Kyler Murray, hell of a game, best game of his career. They dismantled the Rams 41-10. Marvin Harrison Jr., an electric first quarter, 136 yards, 2 scores. I said coming into the season with Greg Rosenthal, I said that this is going to be a top 10 offense in the NFL in the Arizona Cardinals. And right now they are proving me right, and I'm very happy about it.
I think the biggest surprise was their defense played so well. Now, you're right. The Cardinals are going to put points on everybody. Calm down on Marvin Harrison's week 1 performance. I will remind everybody he had more drops in that game, 1, than he was credited with in his entire college football career combined. He never had a single drop credited to him in college. He had 1 in week 1, and we acted like the sky was falling. Like, my God, the expectations for Marvin Harrison through the roof. We saw why, though. I mean, absolutely electric. So, yeah, the Cardinals look like a playoff team. If their defense can play at all to a mediocre level, they're going to make the playoffs.
They're a very fun team. The Texans and Bears, Caleb Williams did not look very good. That's the only nice way to put that. The Houston Texans, they did look very good. 2 interceptions on the day for Caleb, 174 yards. When you look at the Texans side of things, CJ Stroud, 260 and a touchdown. The defense played really well. We talked about it a little bit earlier with the AC South. It feels like the Texans could easily run away with this by like Thanksgiving.
100%. Also, I'll go back to Caleb. There was one play in this game that I thought was huge and made a difference, and it won't show up on the stat sheet. There was an offensive pass interference on what was a touchdown, and it was a pick play. We've seen these a million times. I will remind everybody that that pick play where the receiver's credited with the penalty, it wasn't the receiver's fault. That's Caleb Williams' fault. Like, that's a timed play. And if the ball is already out of the quarterback's hands and into the wide receiver's hands, that pick is perfectly legal. They are running that play exactly as they're supposed to. Caleb has to get the ball out of his hands quicker to avoid the offensive pass interference being called. Those are the little things that are out of sync. And those are the little things we were worried about with Caleb coming out. I had one scout tell me coming out, he makes so many amazing plays. Why doesn't he make the easy throws on time when they're there for him? And I love Caleb. I think he's going to be a superstar. This is what, like we talked about, what Anthony Richardson has to clean up. Caleb has to clean up quick reads and quick timing. Otherwise, he's not going to get to where he wants to this year.
Yeah, I mean, I was high on the Bears coming into this year. I picked them to be the number 7 seed in the playoffs. Defensively, I'm really high on them. Yeah, man, they're like, this is a team, and we heard the entire conversation, the entire offseason. It's like, oh man, no number 1 overall pick has ever been set up in the way that Caleb Williams is. Unfortunately, now he's dealing with Keenan Allen, dealing with plantar fasciitis, and right now he's working through his own progression and getting better, where it's going to take some time. And Aaron Schatz told me going into the season, he's like, yeah, I have a low win projection on the Bears because, you have to kind of factor in the rookie quarterback side of things. No matter how highly touted they are, it's going to take some time. And what do you know? Aaron Schatz might know a little bit more than I do.
It bothers me how right he always is. Like, every time I come in, I'm like, I don't care what you say, man. That's not true. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, I'm a son of a biscuit. Like, how does he always get it? Like, kudos to, and by the way, every time I hear his name, I just want to go, shot.
Yes. That was
sure nobody. Yeah.
Oh no, don't worry, I know it. That was like a banger when I was in like 5th grade, dude. Like YMCA dances. Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. That makes me feel even older. And also, I'm sure he gets that every single time. But
I'm sure he
still,
does.
That's when the bar chants my name after a Raiders win. It doesn't sound like an awesome reason for people to drink. I'm jealous of him.
Oh man, that's good. And that is every game on the NFL Sunday slate covered. Buddy, that was a lot of fun. I appreciate you hopping on. What have you got coming from your side of things? Yahoo, Fox, plug it all.
Yeah, well, I would tell everybody to check out Yahoo Sports. I host our Yahoo Fantasy content, Fantasy Football Live, on Thursdays and Sundays before the games. We do live streams there, but then also Inside Coverage is our big NFL flagship. And then we have episodes every Sunday night. We react to all the games, and then Wednesday, Friday. And then also college football fans. We have a new show. I'm part of the College Football Power Hour, where we every Wednesday and every Saturday night. Saturday night, we do the same thing. After the games, we go through all the big ones, have a blast doing it. But just get out there, check out Yahoo Sports. We got a lot of stuff out there, a lot of superstars added to the roster. I'm happy to be part of a family that's really investing and doing great stuff that I'm really proud of there. So check out Yahoo Sports.
Yeah, shout out to my coworker Kate Magic, who's over there at Yahoo Fantasy. Her and I run the Steelers site for SB Nation. So yeah, check out Kate's work over there. Yeah, no, she's the best. I just did a piece on the Jaguars, talking about Doug Peterson, what's going on there. Did a longer form thing on the Browns as well. So go and read all that over at Sporting News and follow the Steelers coverage at Behind the Steel Curtain. Like I said at the top of the show, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that. Leave a review wherever you get your podcast. I read them all, make sure they're all nice, or else I'll just dive into a thing of ice cream and just get plump. It's not going to be a good time if you insult me. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Fitz, appreciate you for hopping on with me, buddy. This is a lot of fun.
Always, my friend. Thanks. Anytime you want me.
All right, everybody. Tune in soon. We'll be back later on in the week to preview week